Most people believe that the more you care, the more powerful you become, that the harder you chase respect, the closer it gets. But here is the uncomfortable truth that almost no one talks about. The moment you stop needing something from people is the exact moment they start giving it to you freely. This is not a motivational trick. This is a psychological and philosophical reality that the ancient Stoics understood deeply, and that modern psychology is only now beginning to confirm. Look honestly at your life. How many times have you worked harder to be liked and ended up feeling invisible? How many times have you explained yourself to someone who didn't ask for an explanation? How many times have you changed your behavior, quietly, subtly, just to earn approval from someone whose opinion shouldn't even matter? Most people live in a constant, invisible negotiation with the world around them. They are always adjusting, always performing, always watching how others react. And the painful irony is, people can sense this. They feel it before you even speak. And without knowing why, they respect you less for it. This is the trap. And almost everyone is caught inside it. The human mind is wired for connection, for belonging. Thousands of years ago, being rejected by your group meant death. That fear is ancient. It is embedded in your nervous system. So when someone pulls away, criticizes you, or ignores you, your brain reads it as a threat. And when the brain perceives a threat, it reacts. It doesn't think. It reacts. You send the extra message. You over-explain. You become agreeable when you should be firm. You shrink when you should stand still. This is not weakness, it is biology. But biology, as the Stoics understood, is not destiny. Epictetus, a man born into slavery who became one of the most powerful philosophers in history, said something that cuts through everything. Men are disturbed not by the things which happen, but by the opinions about the things. Think about this carefully. The event itself, the criticism, the silence, the rejection, has no power. The power comes from what you tell yourself about it. The moment you realize that your peace cannot be taken unless you allow it to be taken, something shifts inside you. Quietly, permanently. This is the beginning of real detachment, not indifference, not coldness, not pretending you don't feel. Detachment is the ability to observe your own emotional reactions without being controlled by them. It is space between stimulus and response, and in that space, your entire character is built. Here is where it gets deeper. When you are emotionally attached to how people perceive you, you unconsciously give them control over your internal state. They become the author of your mood. Your confidence rises and falls with their approval, and people, without malicious intent, will always take the space you give them. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask we construct to meet the world's expectations. And Jung warned that a person who lives entirely through their persona loses contact with their true self. They become a reflection of other people's desires instead of an expression of their own depth. The psychological trap is this: the more you perform for others, the less real you become. And people do not deeply respect what feels performed. They respect what feels rooted. So what is the alternative? You stop making other people's reactions your responsibility. You become genuinely, not performatively, comfortable with being misunderstood. You accept that your value is not a democratic vote. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself in his private journal, a journal never intended for anyone else to read, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Notice he wrote that to himself, not for applause, not for followers. The most powerful emperor in the known world was quietly, privately, practicing detachment from external validation. That discipline was his real empire. Pause for a moment and let that land. Imagine this situation. You are in a meeting. You share an idea. Someone dismisses it almost sarcastically. Two versions of you exist in that moment. The first version tightens, feels embarrassed, starts backtracking, tries to recover approval. The second version simply nods, remains calm, and moves forward. Same room, same words, completely different energy. Which person do you think commands more respect in that room, or consider social pressure? You decline an invitation because you genuinely need rest. Most people over-explain, "I'm really tired, I've had a long week, I'm sorry, maybe next time." One sentence becomes 5. The apology is not for them. It is a performance of likability. Detachment sounds different. It sounds like a calm, complete sentence with no excess weight attached. Even in competition, when someone is succeeding where you hope to succeed, the attached mind turns bitter, restless, comparative. The detached mind observes, learns, and continues. Seneca wrote, "It is not that I am brave, it is that I know what is worth fearing." Attachment to outcomes you cannot control, that is worth examining. Everything else is noise. Socrates stood trial for his beliefs. He was given the chance to renounce everything and walk free. He refused, not out of arrogance, not out of performance, but because he had already answered a deeper question for himself. Who am I when no one is watching and when everything is at risk? Aristotle built on this when he described what he called eudaimonia, a word often translated as happiness, but more accurately meaning the deep flourishing that comes from living in alignment with your truest self. Not the self that chases approval, the self that acts from principle. And this is the thread that connects all of them. Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Socrates, Aristotle, they all circle back to the same gravity. The internal life is the only life you actually own. If this perspective resonates with you, consider subscribing. This channel exists for people who want to think at this level consistently. Now let me ask you something honestly. How much of what you did this week was truly yours, chosen from your own values? And how much was quietly shaped by what you thought others expected? When was the last time you held a position firmly, not because you were rigid, but because you had genuinely thought it through and trusted yourself? And perhaps most importantly, who would you be if you completely stopped auditing yourself through other people's eyes? These are not comfortable questions, but discomfort is not the enemy. Avoidance is. Here is what changes when you genuinely practice detachment over time. Your decisions become cleaner when your choices are no longer filtered through the anxiety of judgment. You think more clearly, you act more decisively, you stop second-guessing yourself into paralysis. Your relationships become more honest. People around you begin to feel that you are not performing for them. And that creates a rare kind of trust. They know that when you speak, you mean it. When you stay, you chose to stay. Your presence itself becomes different. There is a quality to people who do not need anything from the room they are standing in. It is not arrogance. It is not distance. It is a kind of gravity, a settled, quiet authority that does not announce itself. And ironically, this is where respect is born, not from chasing it, not from demanding it, but from becoming someone who has clearly stopped needing it as a condition for their peace. The Stoics did not teach detachment as a way to feel nothing. They taught it as a way to feel everything without being enslaved by it, to love without desperation, to work without obsession, to live without the constant noise of needing the world to validate your existence. You do not become powerful by making people need you. You become powerful by no longer needing them to see you in any particular way. That is the quiet revolution that happens inside a person who has truly mastered this. And it begins not with a dramatic change, but with a single moment where you notice the pull toward approval and you simply choose not to follow it. That is your practice. Begin there